The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Thursdays here at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We don't foresee any breaking news today, but we'll still spend some time on the next move for Nebraska. Numbers to get in, 489-1240, 489-1240, 800-825-5865. As always, find the show on the Hail Varsity Radio Network. Stream the show and watch the show via the YouTube channel, Hail Varsity YouTube. Subscribe and like that. Can also watch and find us on the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio, AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Twitter, and KFOR Facebook and Twitter. Friends out in central Nebraska, Kearney, Hastings, Grand Island, the Superstation, News Talk 900 in Columbus. Counter reads Brandon Vogel gets us rocking here in about 15 minutes. In hour two, Mitch Sherman. We'll get that mulligan from Mitch. He got slammed with some stuff on Tuesday, as we'll make good with Mitch here at 5. Gary Barnett weighs in on Nebraska, Trev, and the situation the Big Red's in at 5:25. Burke's best bets. A lot of college basketball to look-see into as tournament time is here. Can email Chris at HailVarsity.com, 489-1240, the number to get in, as we have a caller all ready to get us kicked off on a Thursday. Who's with us?
F-Bomb Brian.
F-Bomb Brian. F-Bomb Brian, how you dealing?
Many F-bombs. Many F-bombs. You're going to have to pry the Buffalo Trace out of my hand and talk me down.
Well, Buffalo Trace is a delicacy. I will not do that to anybody. I'll let you willingly put it down or just pour a glass and share. But are you still feeling gloomy, or are you thinking, you know what, things will shake out okay?
I'm a little on the gloomy side and a little on the optimism side. I don't know. I'm honestly more concerned about losing Matt Rule.
Right.
Honestly. God, I mean, when is this revolving door of Nebraska going to stop?
Well,
I think the only thing we can do is change how we're voting on the regions. Apparently, that's something we vote on. I had no idea. I'm 35 years old, and I had no idea.
Well, when you go to your ballot box, you go with your heart, right? Is what they say. And, yeah, I mean, that's what today is. Yesterday, F-Bomb Brian was shock and awe and kind of figuring out the why. I think we have the why, even though it's not from Trev's mouth. As we fast forward to now, you want to blame somebody. It's blame game day today, and there are several options out there as to who you kind of point the dirty end of the stick at. You can talk Regents, you can talk Governor, you can talk Trev. I mean, it's really where your thoughts lie. You put yourself in Trev's shoes, put yourself in the Regent's shoes, put yourself in the Governor's shoes, and just go for a little bit of a walk and see what's more comfortable for you.
All I see from the Regents is incompetence. It's been 7 months, and you can't get a president. Come on, guys, let's go.
Let me ask this question as a devil's advocate pairing to you: Is the Nebraska presidency a job people want?
True.
I mean, that's the other side of the coin on it. Sure, it's a systems president's gig, but who am I working with? What am I fighting against? What side of the aisle politically do I need to be on? I mean, that's as much as anything versus just, overseeing all of the systems. I mean, I'm sure they've offered the gig, or they have a priority target, who wants the gig? I mean, you've had an AD opening, a chancellor opening, a presidential opening, and it's a vicious circle, not to mention about every 5 years a coaching opening.
Well, and with how Ted Carter left, do you think there's candidates lining up out the door saying, hey, I saw how Ted Carter left. That must be a great gig.
Well,
I thought Ted Carter was great.
So did I. I thought Ted was outstanding. But Ted said, you know what, maybe Ohio State's a little better.
Well, I mean, I get the whole Ohio State thing, and I think the difference between Trev and Ted is that Trev's name is on the stadium.
He's air quote one of us.
He is Mount Rushmore Husker.
No,
I mean, you could easily put him on there.
No, he was a great player, and in his short time here, I mean, he made some hires and he cleaned up things, but he didn't stick. I mean, what were his aspirations? Brian, I just invite you to put on those imaginary boots or Nikes, or I'll say Adidas, and I think there's a lot of a mess with the regions. At least that's what Jim Pillen is saying, and yep. I think the presidency job is not for the faint of heart, and I think you need to figure out somebody that can navigate choppy waters. I mean, it's been a stormy sea at Nebraska for 20 years.
Well, I'm going to head to the gun range this weekend, do some group therapy,
Thank you.
Do a little bit of that.
Brian, you take care. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for tuning in. That's F-Bomb Brian, and we kind of get into today's theme, and that's blame game, right?
And you ask an important question. Brian asked an important question. If you're on the phone line, stay there. We'll get to you in just a second. But, do you blame yourself at all for the regions that are currently at the University of Nebraska? I'm going to level with you. Schmitty. Every single time there's been a region on my ballot, I have written in myself.
Okay.
I have said the write-in candidate, Elijah Herbel, I trust him to run the University of Nebraska. This could be on me.
To have a say?
It could be my fault that I am not swaying the region elections at all because I'm writing in myself. Maybe one of these days I'll win it, but
we'll talk about Trev's legacy and get your input. Phone lines open 489-1240 or 800-825-5865. And you have had that call to action by Governor Pillen, blames the NU Board of Regents for the departure of Nebraska AD Trev Alberts and called it unacceptable. They've not named a successor. Now, you do know that Hank Bounds, that seat was vacant for 206 days before they were able to name and get their priority candidate in Ted Carter. You're kind of at that same time frame right now. You've got a call to action from Governor Pillen for the interim president, Kaborik, to appoint the new permanent AD. That means Pillen doesn't want to wait for a president to be named permanently. Let's just skip that part and let the interim make the call and name the athletic director. And he's also said, disappointed and doesn't know the reason as to why Trev left. So we're back to the why, right? And part of Pillen's statement, the University of Nebraska has existed as an institution for more than a century and a half. It's immeasurably bigger than any one person, but leadership matters. And Pillen's saying, look, the leadership failed in the Board of Regents because if there would have been a president in place, Trev would still be here. That's the math he's done. Who's with us?
Got Brad on the line.
Brad, thanks for hanging tight. Go ahead.
All right, well, thank you for having me on. I guess a couple things. First, I'm still angry. But I think where my anger lies, it's not with Trev. And I know you got to I look at too much social media as it is. Mm-hmm. And everything, a lot of things I read, it's Trev lied to us. Trev is a bad person. Oh, he just followed the money and whatever.
It's not a money thing.
And it's not. I mean, if you go and look, he's getting paid maybe a little bit more.
$300,000 more. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. One thing you said, and it really made me think, and that's actually why I called, is you said, who would want, to be the president of the University of Nebraska for the whole system, right? Mm-hmm. You said that. And what I keep coming back to is this. We have, like, I'm a conservative. I'm not trying to make this into a political show or whatnot, but what I hear is that, the problem is half of, like, our regions they want to change things what's inside of our public university system. Mm-hmm. The other half don't, and they're very staunch about that. The problem you come into then is what people forget is it's still a public university. Mm-hmm. Even though you have morals and values and beliefs, you have to consider what everybody else wants also. It just can't be what you want. You got to look at what's for the greater good of the university. And unfortunately, because of the fact that we do have some inept regions, and I'm sorry, you do put Pillen in it. You put Pillen in it because Pillen has something to do with the regions as well. So if people want to have a blame game, it's not just the regions. You have to include Pillen in that. And because of that, we lost a damn good athletic director. We lost somebody that had the confidence of the rest of the coaches. You go back and you look at all of our athletic programs at this time, at this date, all of them have had reasonable, if not exceeded, success. Mm-hmm. And rules on that way, I'm like the other caller. I'm scared that rule's going to leave also.
That's what
don't want this guy to leave.
You know what, Brad? That's what Trev leaving hurts. Trev leaving for A&M stings, right? Because you get dumped. But the real fear factor here is a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, because the folks who brought in Matt Rule are no longer here. That's the big. That's not even an elephant in the room. That's the elephant dropping in the room. Is you're worried about losing a damn good football coach that you're excited about.
Or I'll even go this point also. Somebody texted me this last night. Say Rule has back-to-back 9 to 11 win seasons, which we would love here right now, right? Yeah. Who's to say Carter at Ohio State doesn't go after him if Ryan Day leaves? And who's to say that if Mike Elko doesn't have the same success at A&M, that Alberts doesn't go after him? I mean, it would be crazy for them not to, but then it's because he has said before, if it wasn't for Carter, if it wasn't for Alberts, he would not be at Nebraska. So pretty much we're just, I grew up in an era with Osborne and Devaney where there wasn't much change, and now, like you said, in the past 20 years, we've had a revolving door of change, and somewhere or another, this has to stop.
Well, and it's gotta again be a unified front, and that's been the same talking point with the next new hire and the next president and the next chancellor and the next AD, and go on down the list, and that's immediately line 2 and whoever's at the podium. Well, it's a unified vision. It's a unified vision. Well, once you get into the mud, how long is it unified? Because, clearly one of Trev's big plans, and Brad, thank you for your call, bud. Appreciate you tuning in. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Elijah, the other part of being an athletic director is making sure your sports teams are competitive and good and are competing at a high level. Trev has done that. The other part of this is legacy. And when we talk legacy, what did you do infrastructure-wise as AD? What building did you put up? Well, Trev hammered out the go big. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's awesome for the football facility and the other sports when you have a kind of a consolidated central area. But he wanted to go a step further and make a wow factor with the stadium and make it more accessible, modernize the old gray lady that's now 100 years old. And that's where you ran into problems. And I think that's, as we go back to yesterday for a second, the why. I think he had too many roadblocks with this stadium. And I don't know this, but just looking at Governor Pillen's track record of being a fiscal conservative, how did he feel about a damn near $500 million project?
And what do we know about construction projects?
They don't ever stay at the initial bid.
Budget, no.
And that's not a knock on the construction company. Things go over budget is what we're saying. If you built a house,
Yeah.
Right? And that's just a extremely smaller scale.
And I guess
the call to action, though, isn't wrong with being able to name a permanent AD. But you've got a hell of a sell job right now that it's going to be different this time from a support staff with whoever's coming in as president that is, by the way, going to be your boss because things got rearranged with Carter.
And that's kind of where I'm at right now. To expand on that a little bit, mad at Trev for leaving. He was in a position where, based on what we have heard, there were roadblocks to him accomplishing what he wanted to accomplish at Nebraska. Wasn't a fan of the leadership that was above him. And I mean, if you talk about any other job in the country that's not the athletic director at Nebraska, you wouldn't fault somebody for being upset with the leadership and feeling like they didn't have the resources to accomplish what they wanted to do in their role, so they leave and go find a place where you can. You wouldn't be upset at somebody for that, and I'm not upset at Trev for that. I'm upset in the way in which Trev went about it. Being a place that you care about more than any other place, the University of Nebraska, at least that's what you've said, that this is a place that you truly care about. You didn't leave in a way that shows that you cared about this place. Mm-hmm. You left this place in a dumpster fire by the way in which you left. That you don't have a president at the University of Nebraska. You knew the Board of Regents would have their hands tied in that way. So you go try to make a power play. And now that you're on the way out, the University of Nebraska needs a president. They need an athletic director, and they have image issues that they have to fix because of the way in which you left. Yeah. Like, that's why I'm mad at Trev. Not mad that he left. It's the way in which he went about it, going a lateral move where it's not even more money. That's a gross thing to do.
It's a lateral move.
Who quote unquote cares about this place.
But it's a bigger picture thing. I think as you step back a little bit, and I'm not mad at Trev either, but I think it's revealing itself that maybe the motives again were for his grander legacy.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. It's Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Cornhead Lager. Find us on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. NU Grandpa checks in. KG in at second as we do our starting five. Roger says, what's up? Jeff Snitley. And Jeff says, good riddance to Trev. Everywhere he leaves to escape a mess that he helped create. Don't put this on the Board of Regents. Multiple investigations are still ongoing at UNO and UNL involving him. So Mr. Snitley, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty, has spoken.
And I'm going to disagree with that for just a second. I think Trev Alberts left the athletic department despite some of the issues. Primarily, you look at the lawsuit and you look at some of the failures in the fundraising for the stadium project. Trev still, despite all that, left the Nebraska athletic department in a better place than it was whenever he arrived. I mean, in terms of structure, in terms of organization, he trimmed some fat, got a group of people all pulling in the right direction. I blame the Board of Regents and the leadership of the university for Trev leaving, but Trev is at fault for the way in which he left and the mess that he has left behind for the Board of Regents.
Is the South Stadium going to go forward or not? Brandon Vogel, counterread.com. Get his column, him and Aaron Sorensen, a bi-weekly newsletter for you. Scott has checked in. Black Hills Brendan is in. Elijah. Vogues, thank you. And thank you for posing the statement, Reveille overruns us. That one hurts. Oh, it hurts. Oh, man. What do you think, man? 24 hours later, we're getting into the finger-pointing aspect, and, the governor pulled the old grenade clip and issued a call to action and threw the Board of Regents under the bus. Let's sift through some of that. I also want to get your take on the South Stadium project. And, Trev gone. Trev always had bigger aspirations, don't you think? Is that becoming a little more clear to you?
The news from yesterday has made me wonder about that. I'm not saying I went to bed on Tuesday night thinking that. Like, I really went to bed on Tuesday night thinking, like, maybe this is Trev's last job. He's, seems pretty committed to the task at hand. I mean, he's taken on some really bold projects when you look at the stadium expansion, which I know we'll probably get to a little bit later. And it's, I don't know, it's just, it's tough to step. I put myself in those shoes. Like, if you're gonna go that way and put those things out there, like it seems like it would be a tough place to leave without kind of finishing those or being a little bit at least further down the road, so to speak. So I was pretty surprised by the reports when they emerged yesterday morning. I would say, prior to that point, I had considered Nebraska as as an athletic department, that it was on a upward trajectory. Like, we know basketball is real solid right now. Both programs are going to be in the NCAA tournament. Wrestling's having a great year, and it felt like you got the football hire right, even though it's really, really early to say that. All good things. And for him to leave for A&M, which would have been a different story if he's leaving for Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, something like that. Kind of cast it back to like, oh no, maybe things are still chaos, which has kind of been, I think, the ruling feeling of Nebraska athletics over the past decade plus. I mean, you can just look at the numbers, which I did in my column for today at Counter Read, in terms of the number of ADs they've had. We talk a lot about the number of football coaches they've had. The ADs piece of it is probably worse.
It is. Have gotten word that we are going to have an interim athletic director announcement soon. That could mean 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, a little bit after 5 o'clock. And a couple of names, Vogues. Let's go there for a second. Call to action. Boom. Within the workday, as we're anticipating that interim athletic director announcement. Mitch Sherman will be with us in the next hour. So do you think they've looked at Rasmussen from the former Creighton AD as the option? I know John Cook's the popular name because he's in-house and he's awesome. You know John Cook well. You did his biography with him, Dreaming Like a Champion. What's your take on Cook as an option? I think he wants to coach and probably not fundraise, but am I wrong?
Yeah, my feeling is that time may have passed.
Well, in
which is fine. Like, big picture, I could have seen Cook having some interest in that. But you get to this point in his career, we all kind of assume that like it's not gonna go on forever. And also, like, you're stepping into college athletics at a really volatile time. So not only do you got to be able to have answers on NIL and all of this other stuff, but you might have to be in a boardroom arguing for how many spots the Big Ten's going to try and lock in for the college football playoff. I mean, it's massive. And we know that Cook's, a football fan and a sports fan broadly, but like the learning curve there, just to get up to speed on everything, when you have to be a full-time volleyball coach of one of the most successful volleyball programs in the country, like it's immense. So I would be very surprised if that were a realistic option.
Well, it's to me, Brandon, I think the time has passed in college sports. I mean, Husker fans are used to Devaney being the legendary head coach stepping into the AD role, Tom Osborne being the legendary head coach stepping into the AD role. I think the time has passed in college sports, and college football in particular, where that's really an option anymore because of how the job of the athletic director has changed, where it's, as you're laying out, I mean, you're talking TV contracts and college football playoff. It's not just managing the sports within the university anymore. The role of the athletic director is so much grander than that I don't know that being a high-level coach is the proper preparation to give you the experience you need to be an athletic director, whether that's interim or full-time in college sports anymore.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. We still call them athletic directors, but what they really are CEOs of $200 million companies. Yep. And not only that, like if you're, the CEO of a company that can just focus on profits and growing your business, that's one thing. But you have other very real concerns about, like, sure, we all know that football drives the bus, and it's basketball after that, and Nebraska volleyball's right in the mix, et cetera, but you have a duty to the cross country team too, and you have academic concerns and all of these things. Like it's not an easy job. So particularly now. So yeah, the days of our head football coach is also the AD. So, from the 1960s where the guy's making the women's basketball schedule as well, or men's basketball, I guess, probably more likely at the time. Those days are done.
Phone call?
Yeah, we got John on the line.
Okay, let's let John hang while we have Vogues on.
Okay, we can do that.
All right, John, hang tight. So, Vogues, as we go over some things, we've kind of laid out Trev and his trip to A&M. South Stadium, my friend, what is needed, what is necessary, what's extravagant? Is this thing put on ice? Do you compromise? And you need a president to green light that, and now you need an AD, interim or not, to move forward with it if it's a priority. Price tag was incredible.
High price tag to the point where, given all of the projects Nebraska has going on, given that the state hasn't yet, I think they would have, but hasn't yet committed funding to that, which we've seen them do in other instances. It kind of felt like a coin flip of whether or not that was going to go through as designed if Alberts was here for the next 5-6 years. So now without him here, it's probably going to be largely up to the next AD of like, did you see what Trev saw? And I agreed with his assessment. Like the fan experience, like Trev was forward thinking, I think, in that regard. At least in our local context. Mm-hmm. And does your new AD say, yeah, that was a good idea. This is now my fight too. That's probably what it comes down to in terms of the fate of that project.
Well, whenever you talk about that project, I think it is a great representation of the grander issues that Trev thought he was facing as the AD, why he's on the way out. My take yesterday, and I want to get your take today with 24 hours of hindsight that we can look at, was that Trev was essentially, for lack of a better comparison, playing a poker game yesterday where he had what he felt was a good hand, so he went all in. And I don't think he actually wanted to leave for Texas A&M. I think he wanted to accomplish some things here, but once all your chips are on the table, you can't fold. You gotta play it out, and I think that's what yesterday was Trev playing it out. You know what? If I threaten with Texas A&M, I got to go to Texas A&M. Is that your take that Trev, with this move, didn't want to leave Nebraska, but he was forced to because he got called?
Yeah, I don't know enough to say it's my take, but I would say that's the way that I lean. Mm. And like I said a little bit earlier, you know, with the Ted Carter thing, like we can look at Nebraska, you know, locally, and be like, oh, you have everything you need here to like be very comfortable and win a ton and like achieve all your goals. And I still think that's the case. That said, like if you step outside of that and look at it objectively, like Ohio State's probably one of the 3 best athletic programs in the country. Like it just is. So, and I know Ted Carter was, you know, outside of athletics, but this largely extends to the university. That's why the universities pay so much attention to athletics. So you could kind of get that. With A&M, it's been better than Nebraska recently, but it's close enough to the point where it's like, oh, is this, you know, when the news came out yesterday morning, I can be completely honest, I was like, is this a leverage play? And I still kind of wonder, and to your point, Elijah, like if it is, like if you get called, then you made your play and they called you, and that's kind of the end of the story.
Vogues, give us 2 minutes in overtime. Is that okay? Do you have a couple minutes on the other side?
Yep.
All right. Brandon Vogel, counterread.com, hashing through the last 24 hours. A interim AD set to be announced here, air quote, soon is the word we're getting. So once that happens, we will react in real time with you. Join us on the stream, Hail Varsity YouTube, of course, across the Hail Varsity Radio Network at HVarsity Radio. Follow the show on Twitter. That's Elijah Herbel at Herbal Essence. Chris Schmidt at Schmidt_radio. Brandon Vogel hangs tight if you're on the phone lines. Stay there. We'll get to you, we promise, at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. More with Vogues on the way with Hail Varsity.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Brandon Vogel with us from Counterread, counterread.com. Vogues, as you sift through the next moves for Nebraska, we were getting the temperature, and we'll have a interim AD announcement here soon, possibly before the top of the hour. We will pass that along to you when we get the official announcement and react in real time with you, because things got to get moving forward. What's your read on the Nebraska fan base? Yes, they're angry. Yes, they're ticked off. Yes, they're hurt. Is it the circumstance just kind of cutting and running, that perception, or is it more so getting dumped for somebody else? Like if Trev leaves to be the college football playoff chair in this new formed mega league, or if Trev takes it, if he goes to something bigger, right, like national level, that's one thing. But to go to a competing university that has some history of poaching from Nebraska, Bill Byrne, Rob Childress, does that pour a little more salt into it for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does. I mean, I think it's hard to assess. Like, sort of the loudest voices I've heard, the people who are most upset about this is, at a fairly, like, I mean, you can pull up the quotes from like what Trev Alberts was saying a couple of weeks ago to he's gone now and feels spurned by that. And that's a very real reaction. I think the different thing this time around has been, for me at least, and what I've observed is, I think there's some real concern about why this keeps happening. Mm-hmm. And that's painful if you're a Nebraska fan right now, but I would posit that it's good in the long run, because for me, that's kind of the issue that needs to get solved. And it's tough to do because, there's an interim president. There's no AD at the moment. Sounds like there's going to be an interim AD very soon. But it's like, who's going to kind of unify all of these visions? As I wrote this morning, like, everybody invested in Nebraska athletics, like, wants it to succeed. But you can have the greatest fan support in the world, and if they're all individual voices and there's no kind of cohesive plan, what do you have? Mm-hmm. And I think we've seen what you have in the recent past at Nebraska. And this one was such a shock to me, because I thought Alberts was the person who was getting Nebraska on that road of, like, I mean, he's a very amiable person. He was always available to talk. He said that at his very first press conference, and it was true. Like, if you ask Trev Alberts, can we sit down? Like, it may not happen tomorrow, but he would find time to do it. And despite that, he wasn't afraid to have hard conversations. And I think that was a unique combination of skills that you're not guaranteed to get every time you're out there in the market.
Vogues, what is happening with Counter Read? How can folks get signed up? Tell them what you and Aaron are doing, man. And again, great work with your column in reaction to Trev. Brandon,
perhaps I'll defer to him based on his first name alone. Sounds good to me.
And for those listening, Brandon chimes in on the stream chat and says what Vogel just said is invest in some whiskey, because this show is not getting fixed anytime soon.
Get medicated.
I would add, I mean, maybe it does. It's like hiring a football coach. Like, we talk about these things to death, but it's like, hey, you're one good hire away from being like 3 years down the road, which I guess 3 years is a long time and a lot of whiskey potentially. But we'll find out later how good the hire is. Over Counter Read, I of course wrote about the happenings of yesterday for our newsletter this morning. Aaron's got some more coming up, and some spring football stuff for Friday. It's kind of crazy to think that if this goes off as scheduled, it looks like Matt Rule, scheduled press conference for Monday, might be the first person to take the podium in an official capacity for anybody for athletics. So I'm sure that'll be fun for him coming off of a
Scotland
vacation,
outing.
Yeah, we'll be on all of that stuff. Of course, NCAA tournament, and Big Ten basketball tournament this weekend. We'll have some stuff on that, and all of a sudden there's plenty to talk about at Nebraska, and there's plenty of questions to like try and do the reporting on and try and answer about this AD switch. So we're on it. We may not have those answers today. I don't know that anybody truly does, but we're trying.
Vogues, we appreciate you much, man. Thank you for your time and insight as always.
Thanks.
We'll talk Saturday, bud.
Thanks, guys.
There he is, Brandon Vogel, counter read. John, thanks for your patience. Go for it.
Hey, I lived in Central Texas for 30 years, and Aggie athletics has been a novella for the last 50 years. I think Trev needs to be prepared to be looking behind his back at every turn. There's going to be politicians and boosters that are always going to be second-guessing the Aggie athletic department, and it's just an ongoing melodrama down there. Next item is in honor of Trev's move to A&M. I think you ought to have Aggie Joke Day.
My cousin went to Texas.
I'll start off with the first Aggie joke, and that is, how many Aggies does it take to change a light bulb?
Don't know.
3, 1 to hold the bulb, and 2 to twist the ladder.
So good. John, I love that. I like that. Well, yeah, and that's the rep with A&M is they've been through 5 ADs since Bill Byrne left in 2012. So
well, it's not even that. It's just you have to go back to the days of Emery Billard, and every time somebody down there is trying to work behind the coach's back to pay players, there's always been something going on. They're more inclined to cheat.
Now it's okay to cheat.
Well, no, I'm talking about this is 40 years ago.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's okay now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about the Aggie athletic department has been a melodrama of people trying to influence it and to find ways to best the University of Texas, and it's always come back to money. And so there's always somebody there, a booster or somebody that's going to try to do something to give the Aggies an advantage, and they get caught at it. And then they get on probation or they get their hand slapped. But you just have to be careful that there are going to be people working their own endeavors behind your back. And I don't know that Trev understands that. I'm just saying, unless you've actually lived in that environment down there, you don't understand how endemic it is to the boosters.
John, thank you for your insight, buddy. Appreciate you calling and giving us your thoughts on needing a head on a swivel there in College Station.
And I know Paul's hanging on the line.
Paul
as
be
well.
with us.
Paul, we'll get to you after the break, I promise. Thank you for your patience hanging with us here.
Yeah, well, more your stream comments and maybe a interim AD announcement here before 5. Mitch Sherman, 15 minutes away. Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Mitch Sherman's 10 minutes away. Going to check in with Gary Barnett unless there's breaking news. And let's get to Paul. Paul, you've been hanging on. Paul, thanks for hanging in. Go ahead.
I don't know if anybody else has broached the subject, but I think I cracked the code on figuring out why Trev left. Basically, I think we were all correct in presuming that of AD jobs, Nebraska was his ultimate final destination. It was his dream job, and I think we're still right about that. What's wrong is that that's not his career goal. I think he wants to be the next Jim Delaney.
Well, he applied for the Big Ten commissioner gig. He has national aspirations, I think. And
yeah, I think that's the simple answer to all this.
Yeah, and part of that resume padding, as you could call it, is to have a project, i.e. the South End Zone project. And I got corrected on the stream here that the Moose started off the Go Big idea.
Yeah, he did. Okay. But Trev was the one who rallied.
Got it through the goal line, yes. Right? But yeah,
Moose picked up one first down. Trev came in and finished the drive.
Yeah. Moose got hurt. And Trev came in and got over the goal line. But no, he might have a dream job, but career goal. That's a great way to put it.
Well, yeah,
Paul?
On the resume, you got to have one more stop where you stick up 2 middle fingers on your way out the door.
Well, I don't know about that. I think.
I'm kidding.
I know.
Christ. I'm not wrong.
No,
on Moose, I suppose it's like a player that played with Chamberlain, and he was able to say, yeah, Chamberlain and I, we had the game where we scored a combined 103 points.
Mm-hmm. I had 3.
Had 100 of them.
Uh-huh. Paul, thanks for the phone call, but I appreciate you hanging in. And no, that's well put by Paul.
I just don't know.
Career goal, right?
Don't know that Texas A&M was necessary in him move. This is not a move up the ladder type move. Maybe one rung.
I think someday there'll be a college football czar.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? And who better to position oneself for that title and job than a guy who's been AD in the SEC and an AD in the Big Ten? I mean, that's pretty hard to beat. And if you're an All-American and a Butkus guy, I honestly think, as I go back, I think he wanted the presidency. That way he could, with him as an associate athletic director on that food chain of the academic hierarchy, you could have been considered for it. So not only am I a college football Hall of Famer, not only am I a Butkus winner, not only am I a athletic director, but a university president that has all of that has athletics and academics, and college football czar,
and that's why
resume, no one touches that.
That's why I think yesterday was a case of Trev Alberts putting all his chips in the table, going all in, and then whenever you get called, you gotta run it out. Mm-hmm. That's my take on it.
Here's what I drew on the flop.
I don't think Trev's initial plan yesterday was Texas A&M or bust. I think he had bigger plans.
And it was his backup plan.
Yes, agree. Mm-hmm. And once you get called, you can't fold.
Nope. We'll get to more of your stream comments. We'll talk with Mitch Sherman coming up, and maybe an announcement here. But by the time we're back on, thanks for tuning in. Hour 2 coming up. Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back with you. It's Hour 2 at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We welcome in with the athletic Mitch Sherman at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. Been a whirlwind 24 hours, Mitch, from Trev resigning and going to A&M. And now, Mitch, you tweeted out just moments ago, first to do it, Dennis Leblanc, 40-year Husker athletic veteran, named interim AD. What's your reaction?
Yeah, he's a lifelong University of Nebraska athletic department employee. So, been in a leadership role and an executive associate AD for almost a decade, in charge of academics. Nebraska knows what it's getting with him. He'll be a steady hand. He's not going to up and leave for a random SEC school like Mississippi State or South Carolina next week, so that's good.
Wow.
Off the top rope.
Mitch
bringing the fury. I didn't get the intro because it's not a Tuesday. But
it's a finishing move. I love it. Dennis has been part of the backbone and just a amazing talent within the athletic department, and has been just crucial with academics. So he has been a lifelong and very valuable member of the Nebraska Athletic Department. Mitch, as you have processed yesterday, any different thoughts or new ideas to the question of why? And looks like that call to action got people moving to get something done in the form of Dennis Leblanc.
Yeah, I think that was in the works, and you saw Chris McCormick's statement, the interim president, last night, swiftly in appointing an interim AD. It was interesting to read the call to action, as you said, from Governor Pillen about needing support from the regents
to allow Kaborik to immediately work to find a permanent replacement. In what I wrote this morning, I think that it's important for Nebraska to identify a permanent president before it identifies a permanent AD. It makes it easier to hire an AD if he or she knows who they are going to work for, and that's the president in this case. But we'll see how the process plays out. As far as more thoughts from yesterday, today seemed a little more calm. I mean, yesterday, as you said, Schmidt was just a whirlwind, and starting before 9 a.m. all the way up, and just kind of the disbelief. And in the afternoon, maybe a little bit of uncertainty, but once those initial reports came down, and from as many people in the know nationally as reported them, it seemed that it was almost a foregone conclusion that Trev Alberts was out. And as I started to work yesterday and talk to some people, important coaches around the department. I mean, you saw in my story, I talked to John Cook. I traded texts with Matt Rule. He was on the golf with his son, Bryant. They all seem to be either completely in the dark or, for the most part, in the dark. And that's just, it runs contrary to the way that Trev Alberts has run his department for the last 3 years. This has been an athletic department that's been built on cooperation and support for each other. Some of that has been fostered by Rule and taken to another level with the way that he goes out and supports programs. But Rule and Alberts, were one and the same, I think, in their vision for Nebraska athletics and certainly for Nebraska football. So the way this went down, it doesn't really sit well with, I think, a lot of people around Lincoln and around Nebraska. And as I said, I think it runs contrary to the way that Trev has run the department since he took over in 2021.
There is venom, and now there was blame this morning being pointed at the regents by the governor. I'm interested, Mitch, when you look at why folks are angry, is it more of what you just said? Okay, here is how you operated at Nebraska, but this is how you left Nebraska? Or does it fast forward to the fear when we talk about stability? You feel, despite not having an AD in Trev anymore, and you got to fill that permanently, you at least felt stable direction-wise of the football program, and it's not on shaky ground right now because Rule is here and Rule's going to keep working. Nothing has changed in the football offices with Rule, but the fear that the guys who hired him are no longer here. I mean, that's what our correspondence has been in the stream and on the phone lines and in email. I mean, folks, all right, yeah, Trev's gone. It sucks. He's a Husker and he ditched us, and I'm paraphrasing a lot of the comments, but they're worried about Rule's future.
They should be. He would not have taken this job if he knew what was going to happen to the leadership structure over the 16 months that followed his hire. Now he's here, and he's learned things about Nebraska that he didn't know, and I think he has an affinity for the state, not just Lincoln, but for a lot of different parts of the state. He's taken to Nebraska in a short time with more in a kind of caring way, I think, that's different from any coach that we've seen in recent times come in. I mean, I wasn't around in 1962, but I imagine that it's something like the way that Bob Devaney came in and just captured the imagination and attention of the people and seemed like he was an incredible fit based on the success that he had and the way that his program rose. I envision and imagine that it was a similar kind of deal, and Rule's got that going for him with Nebraska. So fortunately, it's not all about, at this point, what's happened with the leadership. It's about his connection with the state, and that's going to help. But yeah, I mean, it's really important for the future of the Nebraska football program and the future of Matt Rule's future at Nebraska that they get this AD hire right, and it's somebody that not just somebody that he can work with, but somebody that he feels a connection with. That's similar to the way that he felt about Trev Alberts. He doesn't have to be the guy who hired the coach to hit it off. Sometimes I think, and I wonder, because sometimes I get the sense that people feel like, well, if the AD didn't hire the coach, then there's just never going to be that level of trust, and they're never going to be able to work together, and the coach ought to always be looking over his shoulder because he wasn't the guy. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's the case. And you have to look no farther than the connection that Trev Alberts had with Fred Hoiberg. I think up until yesterday, you would say that those two, with what they've been through together, formed a great pair. And I think there's an opportunity now with Matt Rule going into year 2 and a new athletic director coming in under difficult circumstances, but a new athletic director coming in for those two people, Matt Rule and his next boss, to go through some things together and rebuild Nebraska football in a way that makes Matt Rule want to stay here long term.
Mitch, before we get to some potential candidates to be Nebraska's next AD, and obviously we're just kind of throwing it at a wall and seeing what sticks at this point in time, I want to get one more thought on Trev. I've seen this thrown around on social media. I want to get your take on it. You think Trev in the past 24 hours has tarnished his legacy at Nebraska? Do you think that it's tarnished? I've seen people say take his name off the stadium, and I think that's a step way too far. But it's where people are coming from right now. They Benedict Arnold, traitor, whatever people are calling him. Has he tarnished his legacy?
Yeah, they're not going to take his name off the stadium. Nothing that he did as a player has changed. But absolutely, his legacy has changed and been tarnished. He betrayed Nebraska, and look, that's a harsh word, and I'm happy to hear all of the reasons that he felt this was the right thing to do. And I would even I believe that if he had an honest moment and we were able to sit down, or whoever, he was able to have a town hall and talk about this, or a press conference, and say, this is the reason, I would probably sympathize with him on some of those things. I'm sure I would. I mean, you look around at the leadership, and now it's been 200-plus days since Nebraska's been without a permanent president. It makes it difficult for him to go into this process of trying to put together a $450 million project. And there are other frustrations. But that's just big-time college athletics, and that's the history of what Nebraska's been. And I think if Trev is fully capable of, just putting his big boy pants on and saying, let's go do this. We're Nebraskans, we're going to work hard. That's what we've heard from him and others in the past. And I don't believe that it was a lost cause. So in light of all that, he turned his back on Nebraska. There's no other way to spin it. And, you can try to spin it other ways, but I don't think I'm going to see it another way. More than one thing can be right at the same time. Trev, certainly, it can be accurate to say that he's tarnished his legacy, and it can also be accurate to say that there were problems, legitimate problems, that played a role in leading to his departure that need to be addressed. So, to me, all of that is true, and yes, his legacy has been forever changed as of the last 24 hours.
Mitch Sherman's with us from The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. We have the interim in Dennis LeBlanc. Let's talk about permanent options for Nebraska, Mitch, and give me a top 3 that intrigue you.
Oh, it's tough. Schmidt, we can talk about Garth Glissman.
Mm-hmm.
You know him, and he's got a history in Nebraska, native Nebraskan, Nebraska dual sport Nebraska athlete, played football, basketball. I mean, you look at his rise through the NBA, and now as associate commissioner of the SEC, and I think he's somebody that Nebraska has to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds really simple and almost too simple to say that Nebraska needs to find an athletic director who really wants the job, but I do think that's the case. Trev Alberts really wanted the job. Once he got there, and he may have had some decisions to make in the process of interviewing, but once he got there, he really wanted the job, and you could tell in the way that he did it. And I think that's what they would have with somebody like Garth Glissman. But there, you have to expand your horizon and look beyond that. Nebraska might make a call again to Jamie Pollard, who was targeted, maybe above all others, if depending on who you ask, in the 2021 search. The athletic director at Iowa State. Have things changed? Has the structure of college football changed to the point where the Big Ten is on a level that he would have to give it more consideration than he did 3 years ago? Maybe he's at a different place in his career. So I would think that his name will come up in conversations among the people who are making the decisions about who to pursue. And, beyond that, I would just say it's important probably to look at who's going to work with Matt Rule, who's going to click immediately with Matt Rule. And you don't want to eliminate people who don't have connections to Nebraska but do have connections to Matt Rule. I think at this point in what Matt Rule has done at Nebraska, he's earned the trust of the school to the point where you want to listen to what he has to say, in part because of what we've seen from him in 15 or 16 months, and also because of how important he is to the future of the Nebraska athletic department.
Mitch, we've had a name get thrown around a couple times in the stream today. I want to get your thoughts on it as a potential candidate. Dr. Susan Elza, your reaction, your response, you think that could be a candidate? Whenever you talk about somebody that clicks with Rule, that's right at the top of the list.
Yeah, I think she is going to be, she's going to move up the ladder. Coming to Nebraska as Rule's chief of staff, from her position with the UIL, the high school governing body in the state of Texas, she's got outstanding experience. And I kind of looked at Dr. Elza when she took this job, and when I got to talk to her and got to meet her and hear about her from trips down to Texas, as somebody who would probably do this for a couple years, longer if she chose to, and then begin to climb the ladder in athletic administration. The big question there would be, she's been here 1 year. Is she ready? Is this what she wants? Because the path I envisioned for her was a couple years at Nebraska and then back to the state of Texas, which is her home, to run a college athletic department, a Division I athletic department, but not necessarily starting at an SEC or a Power 5, a Big 12 kind of level. Maybe that can be accelerated, and she could take over at a big school. But my question would be, has she learned enough and had enough experience at the collegiate level in this year and a half at Nebraska to the point where that would be the right fit? I will say she is a strong leader and has the kind of personality, I think, that will work in that role at some point.
Mitch Sherman with The Athletic. Great stuff. Follow Mitch on Twitter at Mitch Sherman. Read him with The Athletic. Mitch, thanks for making and taking time today, bud.
Okay, thanks, guys.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. It's Chris Schmidt and the Hall of Fame coach, Gary Barnett, Colorado and Northwestern. Coach, I'm sure it's sunny. I'm sure you've got something on the smoker or the grill, and you might have a Corona or a Budweiser or a Coors Light as you're looking at the sunshine. Can you pass me one? It's been a 24 hours here in Nebraska.
It's been what, Chris?
It's been one. Yeah, I said, pass me a beer, my friend. I mean, it's been one of those familiar moments in Nebraska lore. Your coach or your AD is no more.
You guys have had a rough run there with all that. It's just an indication of how important stability is, how fickle it is, how hard it is to find. It's you say the word and you say, well, we're just going to create some stability. Well, I'm telling you, it's an atmosphere. it's something that's hard to catch and put a handle on it and acquire and build. It's more of an art than it is a science. And so you guys have, and you know what, Chris, it seems like every program goes through it sooner or later. I mean, I don't think anybody's immune from that sort of thing. You saw Michigan go through it a number of years ago, even Ohio State a bit. So it's going to happen, and you guys are right in the middle of it right now. And, you'll fight through it. You'll survive it. But, man, it's not fun when you're in the middle of it.
It's been a 2-decade middle of it, Coach Barnett. Wanted to get your thoughts on Trev. There's always fighting going on, it feels like, in academics and athletics. Not always, but in some instances. What's your take on Trev? What's your reaction from being as involved as you've been in college football?
Well, I was really surprised. As you know, when you texted me last night, I went, what?
Yeah.
And actually, you texted me ATM, and I thought, oh, he went in the ATM business. And then you sent the little note, and I got it. So, it's a bit of a surprise, especially I think for Nebraska folks to have finally got one of their own in there, and you always feel like that's the answer. Every school feels like when things go bad, they need to bring one of their own back, and so you did that, and it was a great choice. And I think for the last 4 or 5 years, he's done a great job, and I think well respected in the business and everywhere else. And so I think it's just such a big slap that it's hard to get over initially, and you will. Everybody will. You'll find a way to work out of it, but initially, it was a big surprise to me. I think it would be a big surprise to most people in the sports world, just because there's such great, Nebraska has such a great reputation out there and has had, and maybe it's not what it used to be, but it still has garners a great deal of respect. The program, the entire university. So it's a bit of a surprise to me. It's a big surprise to me, really. But obviously, it has to have been tough sledding for him in some ways that we didn't know, and maybe some ways that you didn't know either. But it looks like he probably just got tired of beating his head against his own people, and that happens. I mean, I've seen it happen in Colorado. Rick George fights that all the time, and I don't know. I think it's just the nature of I don't know if I want to say it's competitiveness between the two, between administration and athletics, but it certainly is a power struggle at times, and it wears on you either as a coach or as an athletic director when it's hard enough fighting all the battles you have to fight outside of your fence, but to have to fight battles inside of your fence just makes it hard to go to bed at night and go, wow, I got to go to war against my people, and I got to go to war against everybody else. And I'm sure that's what it looks like on the outside without having any inside information at all.
No, I think you painted it absolutely perfectly. Gary Barnett with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, how did you navigate, man? 2 institutions of higher learning, Northwestern, creme de la creme, academically, and you kicked butt athletically. And how did you weave, man, with those two worlds and then go to Boulder? And I know you knew Colorado, but still, I mean, that's also a place that has a high regard academically. It ain't easy to get into either.
Well, I had a different situation, Chris. You got to understand that we were the losingest football program in the history of Division I football when I had the opportunity to go there. And I certainly didn't change that reputation in the first 3 years. And so when we were able to do what we did, everybody looked at us differently. Everybody, appreciated what had been done. And so you always have battles to fight. I mean, I appealed one of my best players ever 3 times to get him in school. He had a 1200 SAT, and I had to appeal him 3 times to get him in school. That battle was hard to sit there and fight every day. But in the end, you've got to control what you can control, and you better be at peace with that. You work on the other things, hire other people to work on the other stuff. You know, my director of operations or the AD would fight some of those battles for me. But you just got to control what you can control, keep your vision, and, you know, appreciate your kids, appreciate your players, and that's sort of the way we went about it, I think. But again, it's different. You know, when you walk into Nebraska, there are huge expectations. When I walked into Northwestern, there were virtually no expectations. So,
Gary Barnett with us. Coach, what's your take on AAU and the Big Ten? Is Nebraska someday, if they don't get back into the AAU, in danger of not being part of the Big Ten League?
Well, don't go fencing with windmills there, Chris. I don't know. I don't know whether the AAU thing today is what it was 15 or 20 years ago. I don't know, and I really, it's out of ignorance. But if you're looking for that to be an issue down the road, you're not going to sleep very well at night because they're probably not going to get in that. So it's something you really can't control. But I don't know. I think that if you are looking for potential problems, there's probably, that'll keep you up at night a little bit, I think.
Coach, Friday football, Fox is going to have a plethora of options. What's your reaction to more Friday night football, and how do you see the Big Ten navigating that? Is it still going to be a Nebraska at an Illinois on Friday? Is it going to be an Iowa and Maryland? Some of the brands that they don't have any choice but to say yes, get shipped off on Friday. Meanwhile, the Ohio States and the Penn States have not done Friday night games, nor has Michigan. The West Coast, the Pac-12 schools moving in, they've done it more than their fair share of time. So what do you believe moves forward here with Friday night football schedules?
Well, first of all, I'm probably not the right person to ask that because I look forward to a Friday night game and I look it up to see who it is, and I'm disappointed if there isn't one. I missed the Thursday night games.
Yeah.
Thursday night was my day, was my night that I was home, and Mary and I would watch the good SEC games on Thursday nights. And then when the NFL took that over, I don't watch the NFL, and so it's not the same. I'm always looking for a college game Thursday night. So, for me and my job, I'm traveling on an away game Friday night. I can't wait to either sit down at the restaurant and watch the game, or at the bar, or in my room and watch a really good college football game. So I'm enthused about it that we're going to get something other than what's been on there for the last couple of years. So I'm in favor of it. It still is going to give it's still a little bit of a primetime show.
Yeah.
Even though it's Nebraska and Illinois, I don't care. It's still a chance. You don't have any other competition. People who want to watch college football are going to watch that game.
Coach, we'll wrap up with this, and interested to get your thought on J.J. McCarthy. We've laid out a lot of quarterbacks, and his stock seems to be shooting upward, of course, with Jimbo back in the NFL. You have the Vikings that need a quarterback. What's your take on J.J. at the next level?
All I can say is, Chris, he has shot up the draft ladder. He's higher than I would have thought, but I haven't done a great job of evaluating him. I didn't watch Michigan all that much this year for some reason, and so he's got to be everything that they think he is, because he's really climbed quickly, and I think he's going to be a great face of an organization. I really do. And I he's such a quality person that it appears on the outside. So, I think it looks like to me the Vikings. The other one that I'm a little surprised at is Drake May is so high.
Yeah.
I think he's a number 2 pick at this point in time. That's a little surprising, but he is a talented guy. But there's a lot of quarterbacks this year. I think I counted up in the first 32 draft choices, 21 are offensive players. It used to be just the opposite, but now they're all, and the defensive players that are on the list are either edge guys or almost all corners. So it's interesting the way it's sort of turned.
Now, this draft is going to be so much fun. A lot of tackles, a lot of edge talent.
Yeah,
to your
a lot
point,
of tackles.
Wide receiving cores, money, and then of course the quarterbacks. I mean, you can go second round and get some dudes that are super talented. Any other year, they're your top 10 to 15 picks, but it's a deeper quarterback draft. So, Coach, I want you to hit them far and straight and enjoy sunshine this weekend. And thanks again for spending the few minutes talking some ball with us.
I'm going to settle for straight, and we're going to have sunshine. So thanks, Chris. Great being with you.
Good to spend time with Coach Barnett. Good perspective from afar with that competitive battle between academics and athletics that seems to be at odds quite a bit. But Dennis LeBlanc, really good pick for Nebraska's interim AD. Danny Burke, we'll get some picks for you here next on Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Big thanks to Gary Barnett, Mitch Sherman, Brandon Vogel, Danny Burke with us. Pride of Chicago, Burke's Best Bets. It's the Burke's Beat podcast. Can log on, burksbeat.com. Of course, Danny spent time with VSiN, DraftKings, and here in Lincoln before off to the big time at Danny Burke 5 on Twitter. Pride of Chicago, you are in your betting lair, and Nebraska fans are interested to know how long Trev makes it in that 5-year contract with A&M.
Man, let's say I'll put
set the over-under at what?
Yeah, I was going to say I'll put the over-under at 3.5 years with about minus 160 juice to the under. I mean, the expectations are incredibly high there. The pressure is going to amount even stronger with less loyalty like you would have at your alma mater. So that's why there's got to be some heavy juice to the under. What do you guys think about that price?
Well, we had a listener in Texas call who's familiar with the workings of A&M, and it's not as bad as in what you got to be aware of that goes on illegally with boosters and folks of influence and wanting to pay recruits. I mean, you've got NIL now, and you've got multiple NIL factions you can go to. You've got lots of oil wells, so to speak, to dip your beak into. All that being said, I mean, they just told Jimbo to get the hell out. Thanks for coming. Here's $70 million.
Well, I think maybe in terms, instead of going over-under on years, it's over-under on gig'ems until Trev Alberts goes insane. How many times do you have to say gig'em before he absolutely loses it?
The dog cemetery may put him over the edge.
Yeah,
just thinking, oh, look, it's Lassie. All 14 of them. They still get food and water every day. Crazy. Danny, what do you like here with college conference tournament action? I know Nebraska's in play tomorrow against either Penn State or Indiana. I think Indiana's favored by 1.5. That's going to be a tough matchup because Indiana's trying for a 3-0 sweep over. Maybe it's the other way around. I think Penn State's trying for 3-0 over in Indiana. But point is this: how do you feel about Nebraska tomorrow night off of some rest with this double bye?
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking on another show about this Huskers team yesterday, and we know what kind of volatility they can present. We know what their inabilities have been and can be away from Pinnacle Bank Arena. But you have to take some positives out of how they ended the season, especially with the couple of road games. And even though it was against this lowly Michigan Wolverines team, that's still not the easiest environment to play in because of how poor they had been away from PBA. It's still a great way to end regular season play. So I think based on the value, Nebraska, I saw their best number at 10-1. I don't hate the idea of taking a little piece of that, because let's just envision that they get the first win and then what? They would be squared up with potentially Illinois. That's a little bit of a revenge spot for that game they lost in Champaign in overtime, where a lot of people, and not even just us being Nebraska fans, objectively speaking, think they got shafted by the refs a lot in that spot. So I think Nebraska could play them competitively. You win a couple games, you're into the championship spot. Maybe it's against Purdue, maybe it's against another team. You're sitting on a double-digit money line price with them, and then you can easily hedge off. Now, at the same time, I'm saying that, yeah, Nebraska could make it that far. They could also lose the first game. I don't think any scenario would surprise anybody, again, based on that volatility we've seen. But I did take a little stab at that with the Huskers. And then the other team that I think is honestly worth the flyer here, how about Northwestern? They were as high as 17-1. Yes, they have a lot tougher path, but they have played Purdue very well this season. They would still potentially have to get past some other teams along the way first, of course, but 2 overtime games against the Boilermakers. You have a very strong defense in the Wildcats and a premier player in Boo Buie who can carry you for at least a couple of games in these type of situations that make the 17-1, at least again, worth a flyer, some pizza money, just something to toss a little bit on. I'd rather do that than take the even money price with Purdue. They got their sights set on just not choking in the tournament. And realistically, if you do want to get involved with Purdue, they always have these shortcomings and play down to their competition. So I'd rather just wait to live bet them and get, the immediate payout as opposed to sweating out an even money price with a team that, again, has their sights set deeper into a different tournament.
Danny, did you have Wisconsin to win by damn near 40 today? Did you have that winning ticket, the winning margin?
31. Yeah.
I did not have that one. I felt pretty comfortable with them coming out on top, but not by 30, that's for sure.
That was a hell of a performance. I maybe you talk about teams that get hot at the right time. Everyone's been down on Wisconsin.
There's only one way to go, temperature-wise, for them.
Maybe that's the kind of performance they need to jumpstart some sort of run in the Big Ten tournament, the NCAA tournament. That was a hell of a performance today, and obviously you're not always going to shoot, 70% from behind the arc, whatever they ended up shooting. But that was a hell of a performance today. That really set off my alarm bells in terms of, is Wisconsin back?
Yeah, and rightfully so. And again, they could easily overcome Northwestern. I think they could give Purdue a run for their money. And I think that's going to be an attractive angle to look at, whichever team it may be going against the Boilermakers, depending on how many points they're giving. But look, time and time again, we do see a team getting hot, at the right time. And yes, it's an old cliche, but it's true. It's valid. And we saw it with Ohio State last year. People are subscribing to that with Ohio State this year. And I know a lot of respected bettors who not only took a flyer for them to go deep, but of course have them winning against Iowa. So I think that's another look to consider, 2 teams a little bit farther away. But yeah, Wisconsin could definitely fit the bill in that regard. They would need a little run like this. Couldn't hurt them.
Daddy, as we wind down, any NHL or NBA props you're liking here the next couple of days?
Yeah, so I got one tonight, only one play. I bet OG Anunoby over 13.5 points at -105. Still saw -110 in terms of the odds being dealt out there. Now, he's playing in his second game back with the Knicks after being out for over a month, and they're going against the Blazers, one of the worst defenses in the NBA, 28th in terms of where they're allowing shot attempts at the rim. And then they're also ranking bottom tier, dead last in makes at the rim. And that's important because OG Anunoby is taking a majority of his shot attempts within 4 feet at the bucket. He already had a really good performance against his team earlier this year. I think he got into the 20s. I can't remember exactly how much he scored, but he soared over that prop mark. And he's gone over this in 10 out of 15 games against the Knicks. I think we're getting a smaller price because it's only his second game back after the injury, not a big sample size. So I'm going to take advantage of that for many other reasons too and bet him going toward the over in his matchup.
So I should start him in my fantasy basketball league tonight as well?
Hey, if you feel good about it, I like it, Elijah. And hey, by the way, because I know we're running against it, guys, did you want me to run off my list of potential ADs, Schmitty? I know.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
You remember our friend Garth? You remember our friend Garth Glissman? I mean, he's got to be good odds.
Hey, he's the short shot.
Okay,
I'm glad you mentioned it. All right, Garth Glissman, I have at 3-1.
Okay.
Then I got John Cook at +650.
Okay.
I got Bruce Rasmussen at 10-1. I got Ndamukong Suh at 50-1. I got Jeremiah Searles at 65-1.
I like those odds.
Searles.
I like Bill Dolman at 75-1. I was listening to your guys' show yesterday. He is absolutely a candidate. Donald Everett Jr., president of Runza, history in the state, long shot 150 to 1. And then Larry the Cable Guy at 200 to 1. Who are you guys betting off of those odds?
Oh, I'm taking Searles.
I'm going Garth.
There's no value there.
I think those are.
No, I know there's no value, but it's a win, baby. It's a win. No, I like that. I like the candidates. You were impressive there. Dennis LeBlanc is the interim. That came down at 5 tonight. So there's the interim, and well played. We've got the over-under on Trev at A&M. We've got the list of 80 candidates for the full-time gig. Per Danny Burke, he has set the line.
I love the legwork by Danny here. That's
it's
great.
all good. BurksBeat.com.
Hey, Schmidt sent me the topic. I just felt like running with it. It's been a hot topic for all of us Husker fans, so we're all passionate about this. Just looking for the best candidate out there and a way to make some money off it, I suppose.
Danny, you be good. Thanks again, brother.
You got it, fellas. Take care.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, it's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Big thanks to all of you for checking in on the stream, commenting on the stream, and the phone calls today, the emails. And we'll get geared up for Nebraska tomorrow, either Indiana or Penn State. Reminder to get buckled up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives. It prevents injury only if properly worn. Make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. We are on the road tomorrow. We are down in the rail yard in Lincoln at Longwells. Excited to be at Longwells. So if you're in Lincoln, you're invited down. Longwells, the location, rail yard right across from PBA, will be live 4 to 6, leading you into meet and greet with your friends at Morning Hookup, Bill Hooks, Will Wilson, and then watch party going on, Nebraska and either Penn State or Indiana. The household was cheering hard for Sparty. Sparty is plus 6.5 against Purdue tomorrow. So Junior and the Bunny are both excited to watch Sparty live another day and somehow still be a 10 seed at possibly 19 and 14. Tomorrow after their season comes to an end pre-selection Sunday. And then just programming note, a week from today, we are on the road. We are at the Gretna Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill for day one of the NCAA tournament. So road show to the Gretna location. Get yourself a slice of pie, some bang bang sauce, a cold pint, and whatever you like, man. And hopefully the weather's nice enough to just check out the fire pits and the patio. Beautiful TV setup. If you've not been to the Gretna location, it is just right off the highway. It is phenomenal. We'll be hunkered down there with all the madness, which is great. And then we are at Maristar Casino with Penn Sports Friday for day one of the Friday session. Next Friday on the road at Ameristar Casino, Council Bluffs, with your friends at Penn Sports.
And as it stands right now, who you locking in to be the NCAA champion this season once we go to the Ameristar next Friday?
Well, I will show you what my sheet of integrity says once I get the bracket. I'm not blindly picking right now.
Now's the time to get your value. You've seen these teams this
brother.
season.
I go.
Good.
Well, there's about 6 teams for me right now. Tennessee, not as a favorite, but they're in the mix for me. I like Houston.
Everyone likes Houston.
But, I mean, the way they play defense, right?
Are you on Purdue or no?
Yeah, I think I am. And I'm on UConn.
Well, I think back Virginia lost to UMBC, the 16 seed. What do they do the next season, if I remember correctly?
They ran it.
They win it. Can add some extra motivation. You have Purdue losing to Fairleigh Dickinson, the 16 seed. They have some extra motivation.
A lot. I mean, for
possible.
sure.
Does history repeat itself?
I'm not sure where I believe Illinois can go with their guard play. They're supposed to be able to make a run, and I haven't quite decided yet what to do about Kansas. Is Kansas, I mean, they got just destroyed yesterday by Central Florida, and they're going to limp in as a 4 seed. Do they flip the switch, or are they that bad? Are they all ready to go 1, 2, 3 Cancun, go on vacation for good?
Or have they already just had their mindset on the NCAA tournament for a month and a half.
Yeah, are they just waiting for it to get real?
Yeah.
And Sparty too. I mean, do they turn into a monster March team? Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Get the podcast downloaded and always watch the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Back Longwell's tomorrow at 4. Thanks.